City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Welcome to City Current. I'm Mary Van Sickle. We're here in the studios at Dakota Media Access. It's a Bismarck edition of City Current. So Jason Timonek, City Administrator for the City of Bismarck, is with us today.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
It's good. We are in mid-November.
Mid-November.
And it's
temps
still in the 50s.
40s and 50s and
We'll
no
take it.
snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. Don't jinx it. We don't want to talk about it too much. But what we do want to talk about, as always, is we talk about the actions of the City Commission meeting last night. There's a lot of business being taken care of last night. Got to hit the highlights. Can't do it all, but you know, in our short period of time, we try and condense those comments a little bit. So
Yep. Get to the good stuff. And
yeah. But
hopefully-
before we do, I want to talk about a picture that was on the front page of the paper, of the Bismarck Tribune today. Housing panel pushes for $96 million for state's needs. Now, this is a program that's been coordinated through the governor's office, as I
correct.
understand, and it's a statewide program. Not final at this point in
Correct.
time. It is a proposal.
recommendations as part of the governor's budget
Okay.
for the upcoming biennium. And I was fortunate to be asked to be a part of this committee. And as you mentioned, it was a lot of statewide leaders from various disciplines, various professions. And the primary focus here was housing. And it was coordinated through the state, through Health and Human Services, through Housing Finance, through Department of Commerce, because each of them in their own aspects were experiencing a variety of challenges to
Yeah.
housing. And so the committee met over the course of the summer, and our goal was to share information, learn about this, but then ultimately provide recommendations to the governor, and those translated into a proposed $96 million state contribution addressing 6 different areas that are part of the housing challenges. And I guess the one that kind of resonates with us as municipal government, one of the categories they talked about was red tape reduction. And so what does that mean? Well, red tape often refers to government regulation. And so what are some things that local municipalities can do that will help builders or help homeowners work through that process more efficiently, more effectively? Ultimately, the goal is to translate that to lower home construction, renovation costs, and things along the way. Other categories include some crisis services for people that are experiencing homelessness. They may be gainfully employed and just not able to make ends meet. There's also stabilization support. They're looking at financial innovations. One of the things that we heard in some parts of the state, just simply getting an appraisal on a property that is up for sale can be weeks, if not months, in some cases.
Yes.
So how can the state work to make it easier to become a property appraiser in the state of North Dakota? And so there were legislators involved with this, there were home builders, municipal officials, lenders, a variety of people from different backgrounds, and a really interesting opportunity to be a part of that, hearing all of the different aspects, but also very rewarding to know that the state is making some very intentional efforts to try and relieve some of the challenges that are coming along with housing in North Dakota.
Yeah. As we said, this is proposed at this point in time, and obviously there'll be a new governor
Correct.
in
Yep.
January, so we'll see how this translates into the next
Yeah.
budget.
For me, the continuity here is having those legislators involved early on
Sure.
with those discussions, and legislators from across the state. So they're all experiencing different challenges, and from West Fargo to Williston, knowing that they will continue to be a part of this conversation going forward gives me hope that there will be some intentional efforts
Yeah.
made to make things easier for everybody.
Well, and I just noticed you were in the picture, and that's
I just happened to
figured
be
we want
in the
to
picture.
talk about that because housing is an issue that comes up at the City Commission quite a
does,
bit.
yes.
Homelessness certainly does.
Correct.
But also the challenges in the housing
Yep.
for all various different
In between
individuals.
community development and public health, those are our probably 2 primary departments that are dealing with those situations, both on the front end with community development, the growth and the construction throughout the community, but then public health on the other side of things, providing services to those that may be struggling, and,
Sure.
and see people that are working as best they can, as hard as they can, and still struggling to make ends meet. I mean, those situations can lead to bad circumstances. So,
Hopefully, and just more tools to address the
Yep.
challenges. So.
Absolutely.
So we'll jump into the agenda from last night. There was only one item on the consent agenda that we wanted to talk about. I don't believe any of these were pulled for discussion. The Human Relations Committee and the composition of that committee was revised last night. So can you explain a little bit about what happened?
By ordinance, the city's Human Relations Committee is 9 people. The Human Relations Committee, since my time in administration, has struggled a little bit to see all 9 people show up at a meeting simultaneously. I get it, volunteers, everyone's busy. We've all got things that are going on in our lives that prevent us from being everywhere all at the same time. What the proposed ordinance change will do would decrease the members from 9 to 7. Okay, so you can say, well, getting 7 people in the room, it may be a challenge. However, what it also does is it reduces the number of people necessary for an official meeting. In order to have an official meeting where a board can take action, approve minutes, make recommendations, things like that, you have to have a quorum. And a quorum is essentially one more than half. So with a 9-person committee, a quorum, a minimum number for an official meeting is 5. When that gets reduced to 7, as is proposed, the quorum then becomes 4. And so it's a little easier to have that group come together and conduct their official business.
And get work done.
Yep,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
very
'Cause
challenging.
that's a good point. When you don't have a quorum, it delays any of the progress
Right.
that has been gained to that point.
And they only meet once a month, as I understand?
The
Yeah.
the third Monday
Okay.
of most months. I say that because January and February we bump into Martin Luther King Jr. Day and then President's Day, so
Sure.
they end up meeting on an alternate Monday in those 2 months. But yes, typically meet once a month. The meetings are hour and a half or so, but then there's a number of events. Like they've got one coming up on Thursday this week, with the
that's-
community conversation. So it's more than just coming to one meeting. There's a lot of other activities and things that they are part of. So it was a consensus of the committee members as well to use this opportunity. One of the board members resigned. You remember back, I think it was the last meeting, there was another board member who was appointed and then simply went MIA, hasn't been to any of the meetings, hasn't communicated. So now the committee is short 2 members. So essentially right now they're at 7. And so to make this change now, it's a very timely opportunity.
sure.
And then they'll be looking to fill any expired terms as part of the January 2025 with all the other advisory boards.
And did some of the action of that consent agenda item also change how the members are appointed? Is it now the mayor who will appoint?
Correct. Historically, it has been a recommendation from the mayor to the full commission to approve
Okay.
volunteer committee positions. In this case, I think previously it was actually a recommendation from the committee itself to the mayor, and then the mayor would make the recommendation to the full commission. So it's not very common. In fact, this was the only case where committee members would actually be the ones reviewing applications. Excuse me. Typically, it would be staff would collect those and then share those with the mayor for his review.
So the entire commission will still make the appointment?
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
the applications will come through administration?
And go
be
to the
reviewed.
mayor.
Okay.
And
All
then
right.
he will make a recommendation to the full commission for their final approval.
Sounds good. Let's move into the regular agenda of last night. Starting out with the Arts and Culture Plan, it's more of an update of where they're at this point in time. This is a group that's been reviewed and hired by the city to guide your community development department in this process, and this is an arts and culture plan. This organization is called Designing Local.
Yep.
But they work all over the country, specializing in these types of plans. So you did have the consultant was on site last night and gave a bit of an update of where they're at this point in time.
Where they're at, what they've done, they're about halfway through the project, working on closing out the survey, developing some stakeholder and community reporting. Final deliverables, we're looking at probably May of next year. Some folks might have engaged with them if they were at Street Fair. These guys had a booth set up at Street Fair and
Taking
surveys and asking people, what should the arts do for the community, and what should arts look like? And everybody's got a different perspective of what is art in the community. And that's the kind of the point of this entire arts and culture plan, is to help establish a framework for things like public art. Where does it go? What should it look like? What are the topics? Why do we do these things? It gives intention to and some guidance for the city as these projects come forward in the future.
Yeah.
Our folks in community development are shepherding this project with the help of the consultant. So if there's questions, anybody can certainly reach out to Lauren Oster as well.
Okay. And what do we expect as far as recommendations, a final report? Is it spring of 2025?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and they'll talk about opportunities for arts and culture, barriers to experiencing existing art in the community, a vision for the future, and then some programming opportunities as well.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I look forward to seeing the full report coming. There might even be another report in the interim.
There could very well be. Yeah,
Okay.
There's some other benchmarks along the way, and so I suspect that we will hear one more time from them.
Sounds good. Before we continue, just want to remind our viewers, listeners, if you're just joining us, this is City Current. I'm Mary Van Sickle. Jason Timonik is here, a city administrator from the city of Bismarck. We are, as always, talking about the actions of the Bismarck City Commission meeting just last night, Tuesday. We are recording, obviously, on the 13th, Wednesday, the next morning. So, a Vision Fund application came through last night, and it was approved.
Yep.
So, and this is for really kind of I thought it was a really...
You like this one, don't you?
I do. I think
this
it's
is great.
This is such an entrepreneurial example of, great example of entrepreneurs in our community. And the woman who owns Eat Thai restaurant down on by Riverwood
Drive.
Golf.
Yep, right off Washington Street.
A lot of people love that place. They get a lot of good feedback, obviously, because they're now expanding into more of a wholesale operation where they're going to be producing their sauces and some of their products and selling wholesale to grocery stores or wherever they
National
are.
retailers is the goal.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah, so the Vision Fund is one piece of the city's economic development tool, and what does it do? It provides essentially a loan. City dollars go in the shape of a loan to help buy down the interest for a PACE program, which is a program through the Bank of North Dakota. And it is supporting, in this situation, the business has been identified as a primary sector business, meaning it doesn't compete with anything else like it in the community.
No restaurant would get this kind of funding.
Correct.
That's not what happens in Bismarck anyway.
Right. Yeah. So it's enabling, as you said, a local entrepreneur to grow the business, diversify the business, and create a new economic opportunity by putting products in places that they don't exist today. And those places would be outside of Bismarck, which is what helps categorize this as primary sector, is because it would be bringing outside North Dakota cash into the economy here in Bismarck.
Employing more people here. And she's also, as I understand it, purchasing a building and moving. It won't be happening in the restaurant.
Correct. This would be a separate standalone location here in the community for just exclusively for production.
Yeah.
And so all the sauces would be made, bottled, packaged, shipped and distributed from there. And I guess we'll see where the retailers go. So the commission action last night was to approve the Vision Fund Committee's recommendation to support a PACE program interest buydown for the Eat Thai Cafe Corporation. And it's a structured loan in the amount of $111,600, give or take. And the key point here is it is a loan. At some point in the amortization of this loan, it will be paid back to the city, and that money will be then put back into the Vision Fund and cycled through into another project in the future.
The advantage for the applicant is that it lowers the interest rate.
Correct.
And she explained how this was advantageous, and that by doing that, she can now invest more into the operation itself, which is great. She's obviously a very, very hard worker and has a talent for this, food production that is, she's got a track record in the community already. This is great. This is going to be the new Dots Pretzels.
It could be.
Bismarck can claim. So
Yeah,
it'll be great to see how she progresses.
We definitely wish her the best of luck. I should note, too, your neighbor across the street, Laughing Sun Brewing Company, was a very similar project. When they started out on Fifth Street, I call it the mothership. That was, everybody knew it as the original location. As they amplified and grew into production and moved across the street from you over here, they too were a Vision Fund project very much like this, because it was the first of its kind in the area.
And now exporting beyond even the state borders, so you can find their product in different places.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
some say, well, what does economic development look like in the city of Bismarck? This is one example.
Yeah, right. That's great. So there was a long conversation about garbage last night again.
More trash talk.
Trash talk. Steve Solway, your Public Works Director, came forward and talked again about the survey results. We've talked about that. That's been going on for a while. It was a great survey. The impetus is you can't get the right trucks anymore, so things got to change. And a lot of feedback, a lot of data, and now he came forward with the recommendations.
Yeah, there will be some changes coming forward. In the end, I think everyone will adjust to the situation. We talked about this last time. Bismarck is one of the two large cities in North Dakota that still picks up what we call extras, things outside the can. Most places, if it's not in the can, it's going to be there when you get home. And so having to make this change because the vehicles that we have been using in the past are no longer available has caused a lot of discussion, because it's a change for the community. And so survey was done, lots of feedback was given. There was no magic silver bullet answer, so there are some options for the citizens to consider going forward. Implementation, we're looking at probably January. There's some procurement stuff that needs to go on to get some of the pieces. One of the biggest changes that for some that do find themselves with extra trash that is beyond the capacity of their typical 96-gallon container, they can request a second container. And there would be a fee for that. It would be a one-time $50 fee. And then the monthly fee would be half of the existing price for your collection. Okay. So if you have a large amount of trash, if you have a big family, if you find the need for a second can regularly, that would be your option. The can would be provided with the understanding that it will be at the location for at least a year. It's not something where you can just say, well, the holidays are coming, I need another garbage can this month. We're not going to be running cans all over town. There will be a 12-month time frame in which that can would be left on site.
Yeah.
One of the other things that Steve talked about quite a bit that I find pretty interesting is this idea of kind of hauling service or hauling equipment or large things away from people's homes. In other words, you have an appliance that fails and you get new ones brought in, and for whatever reason you decide to keep the old one. Well, some people will put that out on the curb in spring, during springtime for spring cleanup. That's great, that's fine. We will continue to have spring cleanup. If you don't want to hold that item and you want to get rid of it, but you don't have a truck, you don't have a neighbor with a truck, you can't get it to the landfill, one of the things that's going to be developed in the next few weeks will be a process for you to contact Public Works. It'll likely be through the website. You can also make the phone call to have someone from Public Works come and retrieve those items from your home. There will be a $20 pickup fee plus the price of disposal for whatever that item might be.
Sure.
And I believe I heard Steve say they would be willing to collect as many as 5 items from one address at one time. Anything beyond that, then we're starting to infringe on private business. There's a lot of entities out there that do these services, these trash hauling services for a fee.
Yeah.
So we're not looking to get into that per se. We're looking to provide a service to someone that may not want to keep a dishwasher in their garage for the next 8 months until April, when the next spring cleanup shows up.
I thought it was interesting on that point about 5 items for those special pickups, up to 5 items. You know, it's clear that their department, the staff is starting to talk about, well, what if and what this happens? How about this? And, you know, they can't get everything.
Right.
So it's going to be a transition, but it was interesting to hear that, you know, they're thinking about that. Oh, yeah, special, what if somebody put out, you know, their whole house
a renter
out
moves
there.
out and
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot to anticipate. And certainly there are people who will likely take advantage of a situation, and, you got to kind of anticipate that. So they are clearly in the background having the conversations and talking about the what ifs and
Yeah.
this. So it's moving forward. There's
It
going to
is.
be a communications element to this, because
Certainly.
got a lot of people, a lot of households to inform of the changes. At this juncture, we don't anticipate fees changing. Is that correct? Other than the special pickup fees?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So you're absolutely right. This morning, one of the first conversations I had to get the workday started was with our communication strategist, Kaylin Ost, and then we were subsequently on the phone with Steve Salwai talking about all of these things. And so
Right.
there are a myriad of scenarios that we could consider. What if this happens, and how about that? And obviously there will be a lot to learn. One thing we did hear Steve say last night with this call for pickup type program, it will be a pilot project. It's not necessarily a guaranteed thing that we're going to do forever. We're going to have to step away from it at some point and look back and say, is this a valuable service? Is this something that we need to continue to provide, or is it simply just something that the citizens really didn't have an interest in?
Yeah. There's a lot of pieces to this.
There are.
There was a conversation, quite a lengthy conversation about keeping spring cleanup, and yes, that's never been questioned.
Correct.
It sounds like that was always going to remain the spring cleanup week, and continue with fall free landfill
Free landfill week in
Okay,
the
so
fall.
that'll
Yep.
continue. That might change, who knows? But, and then you've got the alley pickup.
That was the other
All
piece.
the different nuances of the different pieces of property in a community all have to be considered. Because at this juncture, I think we're still coming through the alleys, 2 staff
Yep.
in the truck. Someone's getting out and
Manually
taking
loading
loading those cans in the back
Correct.
of a truck. So the back of the truck thing might not be practical in the future. So all the alley owners, or the property owners who use the alley for disposal, garbage disposal, will now be getting a tote, as I
Correct.
understand it.
Yep, a 96-gallon black container, and that
Like
will be
everybody
their
else,
trash receptacle.
They got to use that now.
Yep.
That's where it's going to happen. So again, a lot of different pieces to
A lot of
this.
dynamic things that are happening with this project, and to go back to the beginning, it's something as simple as saying, well, we can't get this truck anymore, and here we've got a domino effect of changes
Yeah.
that are cascading through.
Yeah.
So in the end, I have no doubt in my mind that our staff are going to adjust and adapt and continue to do the best job that they can. I fully expect that there will be a long learning curve for our community as we go through this, because some people that have lived there their entire lives have come to it, just
Yeah.
expect if you put it out, it'll get picked up.
Well, they used to walk into your garage,
I
open
know.
up your garage door, and take your cans out and bring them back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So change is constant. So,
is.
and it sounds like they're trying to be as painless as possible, but transition is difficult.
Yes, it is.
So, and there is opportunity, and I think the commissioners talked about this at length. We are open to changing this in the future, but right now this is the best plan
Right.
that we can see.
Yeah,
So,
and so as we work through all of the details in the next few weeks, there will be more information on the city's homepage, bismarcknd.gov. We'll have a banner, we'll have a button that you should be able to click to get to more information. And of course, you can always stop by Public Works or call Public Works if you have questions on specific items. But I suspect we will be talking about this again in the not too distant future, one way or the other.
yeah,
So,
just updates as they come forward.
mhm.
The next thing on the agenda was you were presenting on the event center, this RFP that went out for operations and management recommendations. And you've gotten through the process of kind of reviewing those proposals and came forward with a recommendation last night.
Correct. And so this is the end result of a request for proposals that went out in August, I believe. Let me back up just a little bit. We received 5 qualified proposals from different consulting firms across the United States. A selection committee of 7 people was assembled, and the selection committee members were representatives of Kirkwood Mall, because there's a direct influence on events at the event center
Sure.
and things happening at Kirkwood
yeah.
Mall. There's a huge connection there. The downtowners, the Bismarck Mandan Chamber EDC, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, city staff, and elected officials. And so between the 7 of us, the 5 proposals were evaluated. The committee discerned that of the 5, 2 should be interviewed for more information, and so those interviews were conducted electronically. Scoring was done, and I will say this, the scores were very close, meaning to me the last 2 entities that were considered, both of them were very qualified to be able to do the work. And so that's a fortunate situation for us to know that it wasn't one clear standout over another, that the committee felt either one of these groups could do the work. And so what is the work that they're doing? Well, they're going to help evaluate, as you said, the management and operations of the event center and come back with recommendations in April of what is the best model, what are the best procedures, what is the best way to approach this. And we are very interested in this as a city department because it is part of who we are and what we do, but we are also very interested in providing the best experience for the guests and the community and the visitors and all of the things that the event center can bring to Bismarck.
Well, and I know there's comments you hear from the outside consultant and negative comments that might be associated with that. But the advantage is that you get a perspective of trends and successes from other centers around the country. What are they doing that's working? How do you keep up with whether it's entertainment or sports or whatever, conferences, conventions, that type of things? They have an awareness that the staff here, as great as they are, they don't necessarily have that kind of exposure to that information. So by bringing that in, it gives you a lot more exposure again to all those things.
And the consultant that was chosen ultimately, Jones, Lang, and LaSalle, they're a nationwide group with offices across many different cities. One of the interesting things that the selection committee identified is that their proposals don't offer just a simple cookie cutter response. Every project has a unique response that is germane to just that challenge that they addressed.
Good.
That's good for us. It's also good for us to have fresh eyes and an unvarnished perspective, because this is our chance to make this building really be what it needs to be, and to hear from people that are interested in having the best experience for us. We might have a hard time hearing some of those things. They might be challenging things to hear because it's not what we want to hear. But if it helps us make this place even better, then that's the ultimate goal in the future. And so
what are we looking at, Jason, as far as a timeline on this?
hopefully April for a final deliverable. So they'll get started as soon as they can. I've already been in contact with a representative from JLL to let them know that it was the recommendation to approve. So moving forward, now that everything has been approved by City Commission, we would expect to get them as much material as we can to help them start generating some research and some data and some understanding of what we have done over the past several years with this building. And going forward, the recommendations coming in April will be very timely, because it will help define the conversations for the budget development for 2026.
Oh, sure. And arts and culture plan coming forward in the spring is one as well. So
absolutely.
I would assume between now and then you'll get some updates, or the commission will get some updates.
Definitely, there will be multiple visits to Bismarck. There will be a community stakeholder opportunity. There will be staff engagement all the way through, and it's going to be a really intense time, but at the same time, I think it's going to be very eye-opening and rewarding for us.
Did you just say there'll be some sort of survey opened up?
I'm not sure about a survey exactly. The final details on the public engagement portion of the project are to be determined as we work through the contract language, essentially. But yes, there will be a time for the community to share their feedback with these consultants as well.
Other than Facebook?
Hopefully.
Well, hopefully you get some positive reinforcement here, or criticisms, or whatever. You expect it all in those types of.
And I should mention, between the 5 proposals that were received, the price ranged between $50,000 on the low end up to $128,000 on the high end. It was one of the factors considered in the overall evaluation criteria. And it should be noted that the group that was selected, not just because they had the best price, but because they had the best proposal, but this group did have the lowest cost at $50,000. So.
Sounds good. Well, more to come on that one. Moving on, next item on the regular agenda last night was a discussion on social media for public officials. I'm not sure you need to explain this, but I think it was just a reminder to be cautious about, for public officials, elected staff included as well on this.
And how you represent yourself on social media, whether it be a personal account, a political account, or an account representing your elected position, as in this case a city official. It's not to say that government officials shed any of their First Amendment rights. That's not what this is. We're not trying to stifle anybody. We're just trying to make sure the commissioners are using the appropriate voice when sharing information about the organization, actions of the city commission. And so the citizens, the participants in their social media understand which hat they're wearing, essentially, is what it comes down to. So.
Okay. All right. And then finally, the last item that we want to talk about last night was Measure 1. That Measure 1 for the city of Bismarck.
Measure number 1. Yep.
This had to do with the half-cent sales tax that have been put in place. So there was some discussion about this because there needs to be clarification on how these funds and where they're going to go.
Right. So voters approved on about a 60% to 40% margin the creation and collection of a new 1/2 cent sales tax, and that currently that amount would generate about $10 million in the city of Bismarck. And as indicated by the language in the ballot, 2/5 of that 1/2 cent would be dedicated towards public transportation, and particularly, let me just read it here, providing reliable service for disabled, elderly, and socioeconomically challenged residents. And then 3/10 of the 1/2 cent would be dedicated to public safety, specifically costs associated with the building of police and fire stations, the acquisition of police and fire emergency vehicles, and the costs associated with the city's utilization of the Burley Morton Detention Center. So what does this really mean? This really means that there will be an additional revenue source to help fund transit, paratransit, and public safety.
Well, I'm assuming that the 3/10 would be the decision of the commission at the table, right?
Correct.
That doesn't really need to be clarified. As these things come up, staff will be making recommendations and they'll act on them. It's the remaining 2 that needs to be determined how, logically, you think it'd be Bismarck. Bisman Transit would be the recipient, but that's not automatic.
Correct.
So that needs to be fleshed out. How do they make an application and on what criteria will be required?
And it may not just be Bisman Transit, because it's broad enough that it says dedicated to public transportation needs. And so what does that really mean? And please understand, anybody that's watching or listening, the intent here is not to be coy or cheeky about any of this. The intent is to serve the citizens with these intended uses. Figuring out the best model and the appropriate ways to move forward are the next steps.
And to be clear.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
clear. And we heard from Deidre Hughes with Bisman Transit. She's having similar conversations with the city of Mandan because the residents approved similar language in June at the local election. There's a lot of unknowns at this point, but clearly many people willing to have these discussions and start to make decisions on how to best move forward with this opportunity in the near future here.
I think, the commission has seen reports from transit over the past few years about the funding challenges that are coming their way.
Yep.
I think what she said, Deidre Hughes said last night, was they're okay for now, right now, but even 2025, 2026, they're going to need some supplement to that budget to be able to continue operations.
Yep. And maybe it's even enhancing operations. Right now, I believe the fixed route schedule buses end at 7. that's challenging. If you work an evening job, you might be able to ride the bus to work, but then how do you get home at the end of the day if the bus route is essentially closed? So maybe it's extending hours of operation, maybe it's a variety of things that are potential here. But certainly it's a win for the citizens. It's a win for both the city of Bismarck and the city of Mandan because there's now more dedicated funding for public transportation and public safety.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our notes from last night. I did want to ask you about applications for the Citizens Academy. Are you still taking?
They are still open through
Okay.
the end of November.
Okay.
And to apply, you can go online at bismarcknd.gov. There's a banner on the homepage that you can click on for more information for Citizen Academy. And then also throughout the entire month of November, we are accepting applications for the various advisory boards as well.
Okay.
Renaissance Zone Authority, Parking Authority, City Planning and Zoning Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, Human Relations Commission, Board of Adjustment. I'm probably missing a couple.
Yeah.
But if you want to get involved, if you want to volunteer, if you want to be a part of something affiliated with the city of Bismarck, this is your month to apply.
Sounds good. Good pitch. And I'll just make a quick pitch for our Dakota Media Access apps. We have them online, and I find them fabulous to just jump on when there's a meeting like last night. Just jumped right on the app. It's so clean and clear, and I was in my car and I could listen to the whole thing. I could have watched it if I wanted to, because obviously it's
Not
got a
while
screen
driving,
on
though.
there. I didn't while I was driving. Didn't need to. So if you haven't downloaded those apps, you can get them pretty much wherever you get your apps. So Dakota Media Access, and load those apps. They're free, obviously, and available. So it gives you a live feed of both our community access operations and platforms as well as government. And then it also has a library of archived content, so you can go back and review.
I find
those
that to be
things.
very useful.
I think it's great. It's was a long time coming, but we got it in place. So, yes, thank you for being here. We'll
My
probably
pleasure.
see you in a few weeks.
I'll be back here.
All right. Hopefully no snow yet. All right. Thank
It's
you.
coming.
And thanks for joining us on this edition of City Current.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.